put a nigga to sleep, stand over a nigga. Put the icing on the cake, dump 8, it's my fate to be rich. Did some small time Jewish lawyer, avoid the stretch.
Can't help but be a real nigga, hitting too many left. I keep everything in 100, not a penny left.
Put the work in the pot, break the law of physics. Come back in solid form, then I move the Britics. I move the Britics. I move the Britics.
I hunt you like a Great Dane. Hit you like a freight train. Run up with your fake jets.
Married to the game, big up to every guest. Guess I got a cold heart, take that over an empty chest.
I like that. I like that. Nice work your lungs, make it hard to breathe.
I chop a couple down, gun fool. I'm Sun Tzu. It's like 3 of me when I'm on my way.
Homicide is a good enough reason.
G-Unit, founded in 1999 by rapper 50 Cent. Original members Tony Ayo, Lloyd Banks, and of course 50 Cent himself. Later, Young Buck in the Game would fill voids as the last real additions to the group. Not to forget Olivia and Kid Kid. Now that that's out the way, today's feature is a group that completely took over the early 2000s behind the massive entrance and run of their leader 50 Cent. The way 50 Cent came into the game, I've always said was the most perfect mix of the person/artist with the character he portrayed / the time and era the rap game was in. 50 Cent to me was the perfect rapper as far as the image he built matched with who he seems to be. Skill-wise is another story that we'll touch on later, but when you speak of everything lining up in the right place to have success, there's no better example, even down to the negative incidents that happened, like him being shot 9 times that made him an even bigger star in the era of the gangster rapper. This image and the success behind it crossed over into the making of a successful rap group in which he also perfectly named G-Unit, equipped with its very own calling chant that you couldn't miss hearing all around the schoolyards or college dormitory. G-Unit was poised to be the next NWA or Death Row and first G-Unit with respect to their accomplishments that can stand on its own. In a 2020 interview with DJ Whookid, 50 Cent was asked about doing a movie about his former group, and his response was shocking. Instead of politely declining or even giving an open-ended answer to the possibility, he abruptly said that he'd like to forget the G-Unit ever happened. But for fans of rap music back in the early 2000s, we can't forget the impact G-Unit had on the rap game at the time, where gangster rap was in one of its golden eras, and as far as groups go, this one was arguably the most popular and instrumental in shaping what a rap group was in those times. They're also arguably the last of the dead breed of gangsta rap groups, as nowadays with everyone chasing as much clout as can get, groups aren't even a thing anymore, certainly ones with the street feel G-Unit had. They were expected to commercially dominate way past the point in which they did and have more than just 50 Cent branch off and make lasting moves outside of solely being G-Unit. Unfortunately for fans that enjoyed this group, things didn't last very long, and today I don't think anyone under 40 really cares for a reunion, much less new music anytime soon. What happened? Salute to Justin Rook for spawning this feature. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Back in 2000, 50 Cent was in the midst of being blackballed by the industry, allegedly for a song called Ghetto Quran that detailed a little too much information about some of the drug kingpins in his hometown Queens, New York at the time, led by a guy named Supreme McGriff. According to reports, it's where the lifelong standing beef between 50 and McGriff stemmed from, and because of it, no one was allowed to do business or work with 50 Cent. It's even rumored that legend Jam Master Jay, who went against the blacklisting of 50, was the reason he was shot and killed, although some say it was in fact a drug deal gone wrong. Either way, 50 Cent had made so much bad blood in his hometown Queens that he was shot 9 times, reportedly almost dying on the hospital bed more than 5 times. He recovered and moved to Canada for a stint to work on a comeback mixtape that would go on to be named Guess Who's Back, a mixtape that changed the course of hip-hop and initially put he and Group G Unit on the map. Stunt number 1, The Game banished from G Unit. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I believe the beginning of the fall of G Unit and a huge stunt to their growth was the loss of the hottest artist from the West Coast since Snoop Dogg, and also one of the more talented rappers in the game lyrically at the time and throughout his prime. To lose Game was huge for the expansion of G Unit as a label, but also because of how the Game left. He didn't just say, "Okay, nice doing business with you guys, have a nice day." Game left by taking shots at the crew on his way out that turned into full-scale beef that whether 50 Cent would admit it or not, those shots really hurt the unit's body and opened the door for them to take more shots from elsewhere in the game when before G Unit seemed invincible. G-Unit is still one of the more clever comebacks and spin-offs of a group's chant in history and was so fitting as Game intended to shatter 50 Cent and crew's credibility. At the time, when being hard was still the rapper direction of the 2000s, having your gangster tested and actually being accused of being fraudulent was enough to sway some fans away from the ship or at least be a huge distraction. Not to mention, Game was a viable contender. He released what seemed like endless diss records after the release from the group in 2005, live on air, with 50 Cent telling Funk Flex and Hot 97 that Game was disloyal and no longer G Unit. This came after Game said just before that he planned to work with 50's enemy Nas on a song and didn't want beef with 50's rivals Fat Joe and Jadakiss. 50 told Flex how Interscope wanted to release Game if not for him stepping in and helping on Game's debut album that sold over 500,000 copies first week and debuted at number 1 on Billboard just a month prior. Many think 50 Cent was jealous of the attention Game was getting surrounding that album by the label and by fans, as 50 saw him as competition and a challenge to his leadership with the potential he must have saw in the game. Game released body blow after body blow that the group couldn't take with the other feuds within the industry they were already engulfed in. Losing Game was a huge stunt to G Unit's growth. Stunt number 2, Lazy Artist. Another huge stunt to what could have become of G Unit was the work ethic of its artists outside the game, which may have been why only he from the group found real solo success that lasted the test of time. But the others like Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo, Olivia, Kid even were all too lazy and waiting to be spoon-fed by 50 Cent to have their own success. Keep in mind, I think 50 likes to feed his soldiers, all for them to continuously need him, but that was only possible because his artists were cool with it being done to and for them instead of taking the initiative to do it for themselves. It's one thing I respect about the game. He didn't allow himself to forever be a soldier. Lloyd Banks in particular had the following and some claim the talent even, although I've always thought he was a one-trick pony that was never built to become a star. Nevertheless, enough people believed in him, but he never rose to the occasion and didn't work hard enough to remove himself from 50's shadow, even after 50 allowed him to move on his own. In almost 20 years, he has 4 albums. And from 2010, his next album didn't release for 10 years. That album sold 12,000 copies first week with lack of promotion by Banks himself. It's almost frustrating how lazy he is as an artist. Yayo, whom I've always seen as a tag-along and the homie of the group, not a rapper, also had a unique opportunity to make a career out of no real talent and didn't jump on the chance to do so. Steadily being locked up and not capitalizing on the buzz the group had that saw even him release a platinum album. Whenever you saw 50 Cent, you saw those two, and rarely would you see them making moves on their own. Olivia and Kid, I don't know what y'all were doing. You only get half a bar. Stunt number 3, 50's self-sabotage.
Banks, he couldn't even tell you like at any point when you speak to him what the problem is. I put him like where I put Marquise.
And finally, the self-sabotaging of the group by 50 Cent, beginning with the way he handled he and the Game's disagreements and eventually Game's departure from the group. Losing the best, most hard-working, and star-powered soldier he had, all because as an alpha like Game, he couldn't share the spotlight, and arguably nor should he have to. He almost died behind building G-Unit. Should he let a West Coast guy come in and become the face of it? Only fans know that would have never happened. 50 was that dude. He questioned that and led to him losing the game. He'd feud with Lloyd Banks all the time, calling him out for being lazy and releasing private information about him that made him seem more lazy and more incompetent than he was. Then there's the lifelong feud with Young Buck, who wasn't mentioned in Lazy Artist, but most certainly seemed like he waited hand and feet for 50's moves and was incapable of standing on his own as he had the potential to do so. He and 50's beef is lifelong and well documented, as 50 won't let up off the pettiness when it comes to Buck, mainly for his alleged love for transgenders recently exposed. With all the shots 50 took at his own organization, it was expected the unit would fall, and they did. They released just 2 albums in 2003 and 2008 that went 2 times platinum and gold respectively, and nothing else, when they should have ran the 2000s easily. All in all, G-Unit had a great run and is still known as one of the best groups to do it in hip-hop. They had the potential to be the all-time great, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.